An unexpected guest in our house this Thanksgiving was the flu. In today's video, I'm going to share with you my go-to recipes for getting through illness in our home. The first recipe I want to share is our recovery tea, comprised of fruits, roots, and warm, comforting spices, aromatic echinacea, and probiotic honey. This is a perfect place to start. Cinnamon, cardamom, cloves, and black peppercorn all aid in digestion, but also in the settling of nausea and vomiting. The same is true of ginger root, but not only that, ginger root is also a bit of a pain reliever. It even helps me with my migraines. Cinnamon also boasts of antiviral virtues, and we all know the potential of honey. So I used 1 lemon, I slice it up, sometimes I add a mandarin and slice it up, 8 thick slices of ginger, 10 black peppercorns, 10 whole cloves, 5 cracked cardamom pods, 1 to 2 cinnamon sticks, 2 teaspoons of decaf green tea or 2 bags, and 2 teaspoons of echinacea tea or 2 bags. You can bring the pot to a boil. If you don't have the tea in it, you can let it boil for a little while, but if the tea is in it, just turn it off as soon as it comes to a boil and let it simmer for 15 to 30 minutes. Strain it all out. I find that the IKEA pitcher and the pour-over coffee strainer work perfectly together. I'm not sure if they did that on purpose or not, but I love using that because it gets every little bit of pulp from the lemons out. And then I usually add 1 big wooden spoonful of raw honey. I find that's just about enough. Stir that in while it's still warm so that it gets evenly distributed. And at this point it smells really, really good. And then I also like to sweeten it with apple juice. So I had apple juice. I usually get the big carton and we can never finish it, so I throw some in the freezer. And I had just enough in the freezer for this today, fortunately. Because this, like I said, is still early in the morning. Like, we woke up at 4 a.m., sick as can be. So I pour the apple juice in, stir it in, and when I'm giving this to my son, I always dilute the tea mixture with 1 part tea, 1 part water, because it is a bit strong for a young person. But I like to drink it as is. It's very, very good. The first day, it was just tea and flatbread. By the end of the day, it took about a whole day. So that was phase 1. In my experience, the typical illness has 3 phases with my family. Phase 1, they can't keep anything down. Phase 2, just starting to eat and drink but still pretty tender. And phase 3, weak but on the mend. That's when I start the Nourish Blitz. It's also known as eating immunity-boosting foods. 3 phases require 3 responses from me, and these are action responses that are always blanketed in the passive physical response of rest and the spiritual response of prayer and meditation. But for the purposes of this video, I'm focusing on the action. But I did want to quickly note that to care for our whole person, it should be body, mind, and spirit. I don't ever single out any one. They are all very important. So I'm not just sitting at home working the whole time my family and I are sick. I didn't want it to seem that way. I'm just showing that part here today because I thought these things might be helpful to someone. But rest and spiritual time are deeply personal to each individual, and though it's not shown in this video, it is always my personal daily foundation. The second recipe that I like to make when my family is sick is our smoothie. It's not our everyday smoothie. It's a fully balanced meal with a fair amount of the aforementioned tea, and it also has an impressive resume of fruits, vegetables, proteins, and notable mention going to the chia and the flax seeds. This can be enjoyed as a smoothie or frozen into popsicle molds for sore throats. All of these measurements are approximate only. Don't feel like you have to measure at all. I very rarely do. I usually just kind of eyeball it. So I use a fair amount of the tea that we made earlier, and the first 3 fruits that I love to put in are always frozen. It's 1/4 cup of peaches and roughly 1/4 cup of pineapple. Both of these are very sweet and it adds a lot to the smoothie. 3/4 cup of blueberries roughly. Today I used about half of a bag, but I really like blueberries. And I use half to a whole avocado, fresh or frozen, it doesn't matter. It adds intense creaminess to it, so when you're not using that much milk, or in this case no milk, avocado and bananas are where the creaminess comes from. I used 2 ripe bananas, and I used 1/3 cup, or one of those little serving cups, you know how they come for kids, of unsweetened applesauce. Half of a lemon I squeezed in, that's optional. 1 medium carrot that I chopped up just to help the blender out a little bit. I know it probably could do it, but you know, I just don't always trust it. And 2 cups of packed spinach. I am very heavy-handed on the spinach in this smoothie in this smoothie. The spinach is good stuff. 1 tablespoon of honey-ish to taste. Approximately 1 tablespoon, I don't measure exactly, but roughly 1 tablespoon of ground flax, and about a teaspoon of chia seeds, and a couple of good shakes, or about a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a couple of good shakes of ginger powder, probably about 1/4 teaspoon. I use a very big heaping spoonful of almond butter and 3 or 4 heaping spoonfuls of Greek yogurt, depending on how many people are having this smoothie. This particular smoothie is for 3 people. I always like to be sure that I'm adding enough protein when I'm doing a lot of high fruit recipes, and for me, the almond butter and the Greek yogurt are 2 of my favorite protein sources. That being said, I have to say, almond butter is really good in a smoothie. Like almond butter and cinnamon and the ginger, it really brings the smoothie to life. I absolutely recommend it. If it sounds like, I'm not sure if it's a weird ingredient or not, but I like it. It's good. We haven't been sick in a while, so I kind of forgot how to do it. I'm not complaining. After that, my son still wasn't feeling very well, but my husband and I wanted to have a snack, so we have a bowl of mixed nuts and this really, really cute nutcracker I got off Amazon. And we just sat and cracked nuts and hung out for a few. It was kind of nice. Felt a little Christmassy. The final recipe that I really wanted to share with you guys is my veggie soup base. There are 3 ingredients that are absolutely essential that can't really be cut, and that's celery, onion, and carrot. These are most of what you find in any veggie broth or bouillon cubes, but they make their own broth when you put them in soup. Like you put them in a pot of water and you boil it and you have broth. So I always add these 3 vegetables. Beyond that, it's highly versatile. You can do so many different things with this broth. You can keep it simple. You can make just the broth for the early phases of illness when you're not really hungry and you want to sip it like tea. Or you can add chickpeas and just the veggies and keep it simple that way. Or you can bulk it up with rice and lentils. You can make it ramen noodles. You can add an egg to it. You can turn it into chicken noodle soup. This is the perfect soup base for so many things. You can serve it as a stew. You can thicken it up with the rice and serve it as a stew. With the flatbread, it's also really good. And I did make a lot of flatbread this day. The best part is you just never have to buy broth. I do sometimes add veggie bouillon cube, and I did in this recipe because I use a lot of water. I had forgotten that I had a cabbage, and I really wanted to use that in this. I love cabbage soup. So I started with a small pot, but you'll see as the insane amount of vegetables pile up, I ended up dumping it into the big stock pot, and that's not the first time that's happened to me. I've done that a few times actually. Yeah, I enjoyed making the soup. So once you get your main vegetables in, that's your celery, your onion, and your carrots, it's pretty optional after that. And in this case, I wanted as much nutrition as possible because it was a pretty yucky illness. So once everybody was feeling like eating soup and agreeable to it, I made everything. Sweet potatoes, yellow potatoes. I found half of a lemon in the fridge from tea. I threw in a couple of bouillon cubes. I have a few things that are optional that I really love to add personally, and that's white wine vinegar, hoisin sauce, totally optional, and soy sauce. Not as optional, but yeah, it's your soup. Go ahead and fill whatever size pan you have up as full as you can with water over the top of the vegetables by at least an inch or 2. I'm not really done adding vegetables. You'll see. And then you go ahead and put just like a capful of white wine vinegar. You could probably use apple cider vinegar for this too, I would imagine. And then I don't measure because it's soup. I just squirt a fair bit of hoisin sauce in. I'd say it's probably just a little over a tablespoon. And then I probably use a tablespoon of soy sauce too. I don't think it's very, very much. But I add mushrooms to this, and I love fresh mushrooms. They're great. They're expensive. I find that Whole Foods, I don't know if you have Whole Foods where you are, but Whole Foods in the US has frozen mixed mushrooms. Here I'm adding one teaspoon of salt. Whole Foods has a bag of frozen mixed mushrooms, and it has so many varieties in it, so I added a fair bit of that too. I don't add the red pepper flakes for heat, just a tiny, tiny bit to give it a little bit of a little body to the flavor of the soup. And I add a fair bit of parsley. I'd say it's about a teaspoon of parsley. Parsley is one of the most nutritious herbs, so I always try to add it. Here I'm just crushing up some garlic, peel and chop. Just crush, peel, and chop, throw it in, big or small, it doesn't really matter because it's soup. It's all gonna even out, you know. Sorry, I really do like chickpeas in my soup. I had some chicken in the fridge, so I went ahead and chopped it up, not very well. It's hard to chop chicken. Chopped it up and threw it in there. I did wash my hands very well, and I added some pepper, and look at that beauty. This is why I needed a bigger pan. This baby right here, I'm gonna take about this much of it. I do really love adding cabbage to soup. It adds so much to it, and I think it's really healthy. Like, I cannot get enough vegetables in my vegetable soup. I will try to get more in the next one. It's almost guaranteed. But this is what I had. And isn't that a satisfying crunch for real? Okay, I put it all in the pot. I had to add more water because the pot was much bigger. I just let it cook on, it's like on medium high. I want to bring it to a boil, and then I kind of turn it down a little bit. I want it to boil, but I don't want it to like boil over. But before I added the noodles, I went ahead and pulled out a few dishes full, because I made a lot. Pulled out a few dishes full of plain soup so that I could do other things with it. And took out about half of what I had in the pot, and then I added ramen. This isn't the ramen I usually use. This is just all they had. For some reason, they were sold out of ramen. It was really good, though. It's Japanese ramen made in Australia, shipped to the US, and I felt really bad about that, but use what you have, right? So it was really, really good. And even though my son this was probably day 3, end of day 2 of his illness, he ate pretty well. I was happy with that. But yeah, I was feeling pretty good this day. I ended up with some sriracha on it, and that's really good also. So recommend that. We did end up having leftovers of the ramen also, and the noodles actually keep really well in the fridge. They don't get soggy or anything. They reheat well. And at this point, we're all pretty tired, and we just spent the rest of the week focusing on getting better and relaxing and enjoying the leftovers and time together. So I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.